it's fun. Like on the business development side, like they're pumped about it. They're working on these big projects that they've, never tackled before. But the accounts receivable person was like, the amount of times I've cried over billing, it like honestly broke my heart. I was like,
sucks.
I want to help you. Cause she was like, I mean, I think not only is the time to payment really different, but it's also the requirements of what you have to do to get paid are really different. So it's not just like, hey, generate your invoice and send it to me whenever you're ready. It's like, you must submit this package of 15 documents, and maybe you've never seen these forms before and you don't know how to fill them out, and they have to be submitted by the 15th of the month, or you are not going to be included and you need to wait an additional 30 days, or you need to log into this portal that you, by the way, also probably need to pay for. And
hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Building Scale, specifically the Building Connection series, where I get to talk to cool people that do cool stuff. That's the simplest way to put it here in the construction space. And this one is kind of a wild thing. I was at a ASA event in passing, met Claire, and I said, oh, this person seems to be pretty cool. Got connected with her team, had her on the podcast, and it was just, I don't know, very, very just easy conversation, right? She came from big GC world, essentially initially structural engineer, then into the PM role. And she kept seeing how like subcontractors struggled to get paid because of paperwork and red tape and all those kind of things. So then she decided, hey, I need to make a difference in the world. So let me start Siteline, which is a program or a piece of software that is built specifically for subcontractors. It is the command center, the billing command center, as she will tell you. So we talked a whole bunch about the subcontractor world and like what the struggles are, not just billing, but then in generality, how do you grow, things like that. This is a fun episode, very relaxed, very, I don't know, chill, very California, even though originally from the East Coast, but now is in California, Claire is. So yeah, hope you enjoy this. I know I had a good time. So here it is. So Claire, you started in structural engineering and then into the PM world for a GC. Though those things, they're helpful together, obviously, that makes sense. But what are things that you, when you were on a job, what were you seeing that other people just weren't seeing?
yeah, and I think like, well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself too that kind of got me into that situation, but I'm like a very, very social person. I love working with other people, and I was very fortunate to have this mentor in my engineering program in college that was like, you really need to go into construction management, and I think you're going to love it. You're going to be working with all these different people, whether it's, the architect, the structural engineer, the trades, and it's so dynamic and fast paced. And I think you should go that route instead of the design route, which was where a lot of my classmates were going. And I'm so grateful for that advice. And I connected with some alumni from my school that were working at Tishman Construction in New York, and just hearing their stories about working in Manhattan and working on projects like the Freedom Tower, I was like, this is what I want to do. And actually, when I was working at Hudson Yards, there was a day that one of the lead design engineers asked if I could give a tour to the associates on their team of the project. And just seeing them like light up when they actually saw the work in the field, I was like, wow, how fortunate am I that I get to like live this every day, and I get to be out here in the field working with all these people and like seeing, the building actually come to life instead of just like at a computer all day. So I absolutely loved it. I love the construction space. And I think I didn't even answer your original question.
Oh, no, you did. You were what you saw, right? Like, so you're seeing it not from necessarily the design behind the computer area, you're seeing it actually the magic, right? Like I feel like every time I've ever been in a car with somebody that's in the trades or a GC, is like if you pass by a building that they had something to do with, you're getting a story. Like you're getting to I did the electrical in that building and it was awesome, all these different things. So it's like there's such this deep pride in that I feel like so many times in other businesses you just don't get that. You don't feel the same way. Like my engineers at Spot aren't like, I built this amazing server, check it out, isn't it great? It's like that's not how it works, right?
Yeah, so, totally. And I grew up on the East Coast and I live in California now, but whenever I'm back with my family and we end up in Manhattan, I'm like, we got to walk by 270 Park, so it's always like there's definitely a lot of pride in being involved in some of these projects, and seeing what goes into building these jobs in Manhattan is pretty fun too. It's very
Yeah,
rewarding.
that's awesome. So you weren't in the subcontractor world prior.
No.
Yet you decided, hey, you know what? Let me build a company that is specifically for subs. How did that turn of events occur?
Yeah, I think like just spending a lot of time with the trades and my experience on the GC side, and, going to some of their offices and working with them. And they're all just, I worked with a lot of really, really awesome builders, great people, and they just couldn't hack the back office paperwork. And seeing them, struggle to keep on top of, filling out these lien waiver forms or collecting them from the vendors in order to get paid was just like a really frustrating thing. And I felt like there was more that we could do. My kind of style as a project manager too is I spent a lot of time, helping contractors put together the paperwork that they needed to get paid, because, I worked with a lot of folks at Tishman that had this mentality, which I think is the right one, of like, we're all partners here. Like, everyone should be making money on these projects. So seeing contractors struggle when they're not getting paid, it was just like a really frustrating thing. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing at Siteline. Like, everything is focused on the trades and the people that are actually out there building and making sure that they're getting paid for the work that they're doing. Whereas GCs are kind of, there's no risk really in the GC space anymore. Like, you pass it all down to the subcontractors.
Yeah. So and we've talked before, where like the system is broken almost. It's certainly not built for the trades, right? It's not built for the one that is putting in the HVAC, or the one that's doing the drywalling or painting or electrical or plumbing.
Totally.
The hard trades that are occurring, they're not the beneficiary of yes, this beautiful building is being built, but I am stressed and like on the hook and dollar wise and cash flow issues. All those things are occurring, and I could imagine it feels very much like an island. You're alone.
Yeah. And there's contractors too that in their greatest period of growth, and I'm not talking like small mom and pop shops, like maybe a contractor that's doing around 400 million a year is still struggling and, drawing down on a line of credit because of cash flow issues. And I think the root of it is that subcontractors are always dealing with pay when paid contracts. So they're not getting paid until the GC gets paid. But downstream from them, oftentimes they're paying right away. So they're paying equipment rentals, they're paying for material as soon as it gets delivered in their shop, but then they can't bill for that material until they actually install it on site. So they become like the bank for these projects. Like, they're really funding these jobs because they're fronting all of the costs. Like, if you work on a project that's pay when paid, right? Like, you are going to pay for all the labor, you're going to pay for the equipment, you're going to pay for the materials. And let's say you start work in March, you're going to submit an invoice at the end of March and you're going to get paid in June. So you're going to keep incurring costs on this project until you see a dime from the client. And that's just crazy to me. And I think there's a lot of software solutions out there that are focused on the top-down approach of, selling to developers, selling to GCs, but no one's really approaching the trades, who are the ones that struggle the most with this.
How did, I guess maybe in your opinion, or as you've been doing this, like, how did this occur? Like, most industries, when you do work, you get paid. Like, that is most places. Like, for us, we get paid at the beginning of the month for that month of work, right? Or software or subscription things, you pay them and then they give you the service afterwards. Why in the contractor, specialty contractor space, like, why is it so backwards, I guess?
Yeah.
And
it's
maybe
also,
you don't have an answer to that question.
I don't necessarily have an answer to like how we got here, but it's also crazy to see some of these, owners who have a ton of work in a region. Like, they can be, kind of predators in a way of like saying like, okay, these subcontractors need this work, so I'm going to do 90-day payment terms, or I'm going to do 120-day payment terms. And sometimes these contractors just have to be like, okay, I'm going to take this job. And it's really unfortunate. And I think, like, I don't know how we got here. I mean, it all stems from risk, right? You don't want to pay a contractor and have them walk off the job. So you want to make sure that they're actually doing the work, and you have a general contractor checking to make sure that that work actually happened before you pay them. And I think it's just the industry has continued to move away from a handshake business, and it's just getting more and more litigious. So there's just a lot of paperwork and checks and balances that happen behind the scenes. So when a general contractor submits their invoice to the client, it takes a lot of time for that to get approved. You have a lot of lenders involved. There's so many meetings happening behind the scenes that subcontractors may not know about. And eventually when the money starts to flow down, that's why it ends up being 30, 60. The industry average is 96 days. So it could just take forever. And then on top of that, also, contractors are having retention held. So it's like another thing to make sure that everyone else is protected from the risk of the subcontractor either walking off the job or going out of business. And you're holding this 10% on them to make sure that they actually finish the work and it gets signed off by the architect. So, a lot of these contractors aren't even making money until sometimes years later. Like when I give presentations on this, I'll be like, raise your hand if it's taken you, over 6 months to collect on retention for a project. How about a year? How about 2 years? And like the amount of people that still have their hands up is like always shocking to me. Like, it's just like, it's sad. And it's really hard to run your business as a contractor when your cash flow is tied up in these jobs and it's not necessarily predictable.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship or running a business in generality is so crazy difficult, just any business. And then when you put a subcontractor in there, it's like, oh, this is even crazier. Like this is like 10x the craziness just based on how you get paid, the cash flow constraints, obviously labor shortage, all kinds of things like that. I often on the podcast, I always say, I'm like, it's awesome that you do this because like so many people wouldn't do this because it's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Also, you mentioned the litigious, which then my brain said, like, we say all the time that like there hasn't, not that there's not advancements in technology, but there's been less adoption of that in construction as a whole compared to, say, manufacturing or, say, other industries. But it seems like the legal side has gotten like, to the max. Like, how do we take all the lawyers and we will make sure that our contracts are sealed super tight so we're not paying anybody, we're removing all the risk. But when it comes to technology, it feels like the adoption of that has been slower over the last 50 years, even, you could say.
Yeah. And I think there are some really awesome tools that are out there on the market that have done a really good job, like educating the market on being more open-minded to software solutions for these types of things. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit behind. And I think like for our product, a lot of what we do, just from like a Siteline brand perspective too, and like we have a lot of free information on our website to try to help educate the trades. So we have, maps around your lien rights for projects to make sure that you're actually protecting yourself to get paid. And it's crazy how complicated some of this stuff is. And in talking to contractors, sometimes they're just like, we don't track this. I have good relationships with my clients and like, hopefully they pay us. But it's really important that you're making sure that you're doing everything you can to protect the business if you do get to a place where you're not able to collect. And the rules are so complicated that even within one state, depending on where you are in the project, are you working under sub directly for the owner or as a prime, you're going to have totally different requirements of what you have to do to protect your lien rights on a project. So it's like almost like everything is just overcomplicated and like no one is taking the time to make sure that these contractors are set up for success in these scenarios. So that's something that I'm really proud of just trying to help get information out there and educate the trades and make sure, again, these really, really great builders are not bogged down by all of this paperwork and tracking and everything that they need to do to make sure that they get paid.
How did you build the trust across the board? Right? Because certainly, say 20 years ago, software in the construction industry was like only made by people that just did software, not with any input from people in construction. So like the construction industry effectively got burned pretty hard because it was like, oh, we can make your lives better. And then it was like, none of this works at all in our business. Yeah. This is crazy. So now you sit in that seat of like, hey, I am a software in the industry. How do you prove the fact that like, no, like we are totally here for you. We are actually super valuable. Like this is a thing that could totally change your business or minimally protect you.
Yeah. And I mean, I was on the other side of that too and had a ton of frustrations with software providers. And I feel like in some ways I'm like on the dark side now of, selling software to contractors. But I think like coming from the industry adds a lot of credibility and like, I think if you work with us and if you talk to anyone that works with us and uses our product, you'll hear that like we are very, very open to feedback, and everything that we do is customer focused. Like we are customer obsessed with helping the trades and making sure that our product supports them. And I think like we've gone the extra mile to be able to support all these various edge cases that contractors come across, like retention, for example, which we touched on briefly. Like Tishman, the general contractor I worked for, we would come up with some creative ways to release retention to our contractors. Maybe like a phase of the project has been signed off, or we can release it on a specific line item. So our retention is really, really flexible in the Siteline product, that if you get the opportunity as a subcontractor to bill for any bit of retention, no matter how they slice and dice it, our product can support it and track it for you. And we're making sure that you know how much retention is held across each project. You're getting reminders if you're over 100% done and you still have retention held, and those types of things. So I think like just going like really, really deep with all of our customers and making sure that we deeply understand like the issues that they're facing, and not just like coming in from the outside being like, we know a way to do it better, I think has helped a lot. But it took a lot of time. And like we're still, you still come across contractors all the time that have been burned by a software vendor, that sold them the moon and the stars and then didn't actually end up being able to do anything that they could. And so we have folks all the time that are like, can I do a trial or a short-term period to like prove that this actually works for us? And I think that's always just like disappointing. And I have a lot of friends now in the construction tech space, and, founders that are like myself that take a lot of pride in the value that we provide to our contractors. Like we all talk about it and get frustrated with the folks that aren't that way, because it just creates kind of this bad like lack of trust from the get of like, okay, I'm just going to assume this isn't going to work the way they tell me.
I feel like that behavior, people that behave that way miss the boat on like, you think you're getting a leg up, or you think you're just selling something that doesn't exist and you're making the money for it. And like, but like in reality, you're just hurting everybody else in the industry that's in the tech side. But then also obviously yourself, because it's like, no, it may work for a short period of time, but then it's like, oh no, they say one thing, but the software's horrible, or the software doesn't work for you. I mean, that goes for any service. And I think that when you really try to just make people's lives better, I mean, that seems very easy and obvious. Well, easy to say, but like, if you just try to make people better, make people's processes better, it's like, that's it. Like that will work. You just have to run that out long enough to people that then hear about you and believe you.
Yeah. And I would say like the construction market is obviously massive, but at the same time, it's like a pretty tight knit community. Like there are so many associations where folks are really open with each other and will share feedback and have like CFMA. We're very involved with that association, and they have their CFMA cafe, and people are posting all the time. Has anyone had any experience with this software provider? So there's a lot of things like that. And then peer groups are also super common in the industry, where you have, depending on the type of peer group, but maybe you're a mechanical contractor and you're in a mechanical focused peer group, and it's mechanical contractors all over the US that don't compete with each other. So you can be really open, and folks will always share like, here are the tools that we're using. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. So it's really important to us that we don't sell ahead. We're very honest of like what our capabilities are. And I care very deeply about our reputation.
Yeah. Paperwork is the devil in the details when it comes to a lot of this stuff. What are some examples you've seen in real life where it's like, you've done the work is good, that's not the problem, but you just don't have the paperwork, the T's and the I's are not dotted and crossed?
Yeah, I think something that's super, super common for our customers is that, general contractors, and I've hosted this, we call it like couples therapy, like GCs and subs couples therapy. And it's always like so fun for me, because I obviously have been spending the past 6.5 years like living and breathing the subcontractors' frustrations around this process. But there are also problems on the GC side too. And they're like, we're not your babysitter. We're not going to help you with this paperwork. This isn't our responsibility. It's in your contract. And like, make sure you have all your ducks in a row and we'll pay you. But on the subcontractor side, unfortunately, GCs, they've got a lot going on, and they're not always going to be really forthright with like, hey, here's what I'm missing for you, or I've received funding on this project, but I've not paid you because I'm missing X, Y, and Z. So, we work with a contractor in the LA area, and she always describes it as whack-a-mole of like calling all the clients and being like, why didn't I get paid for this invoice? Okay, I'm missing my vendor waiver. I'm going to go get that vendor waiver, which will take me a couple days to get it back and send it. And then I'll eventually get paid. And, that turns into like 6 days of an extension of your DSO. And maybe you didn't notice that you didn't get paid until like 72 days. So being like that kind of whack-a-mole situation where you're just reacting to late invoices versus being like really, really on top of it and seeing like, okay, this client that we work with always pays us in 62 days and now it's been 63. Let's figure out what's wrong. Or having just the dashboard of like, okay, I have everything that I need for this project. We're all good. And, I think also just like having so much manual paperwork that you have to fill out on a month by month basis can really like bog you down. There are contractors all the time who are like, I spend the entire week putting together all this paperwork to submit to our clients. And if you can automate a lot of that process and give yourself time back, you're able to dig into the things and work on more strategic stuff for the business.
Yeah. It's interesting that, not necessarily surprising, but it's interesting that GCs would have this, I'm not here to babysit you, figure it out, it's on your contract, because like they have to then go to the city or the municipality to get things passed. And then the city, because you're like, no, you're missing stuff. And then they're like, what? And they get mad. So it's literally, it happens to them at that level. So you'd be like, you hate it when the city does that to you. Why would you then choose to do that to somebody else?
The absolute
a crazy
worst
idea.
Well, and the worst too is when there's a document issue for one subcontractor on a project and it holds up the draw for everybody and no one's getting paid because of this like one sheet of paper that this subcontractor forgot to sign. And it's just like so painful and frustrating.
That's that's the saddest thing ever. Like it's done. The project's here. It's done. Let's go.
Yeah.
No, you didn't sign this one paper.
Yeah, it's painful.
So when you were a PM, what did you help the specialty trades that you worked with say like, hey, I feel for you? And is that kind of the starting point of that? Like, ooh, this is a whole demographic that is just totally underserved. And it's like, they just need a little guidance and a little help. And obviously you can put that in a software.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there was a time where I would have, a contractor bill for stored materials. And I worked on these mega projects in New York. So it's totally justified to build for stored materials. You're getting all this custom glass work from Germany and it's going to sit in your shop because someone else is behind schedule. Like you should get paid for it.
Oh, yeah.
But I would, they would put it on their bill and be like, I want to bill for stored materials. And I would get it and I'd have to reject it because I'd be like, it's in your contract. Here's what you owe me to be able to bill for stored materials. Because you're taking on a lot of risk as an owner when you pay for all that glass before it's actually installed, because if anything happens, so you want to make sure you have the insurance documents and everything. So there are in the contract, here's everything you need for me to be able to pay you in advance for those materials. And, I would say that and I'd be like, look, and it's unfortunate, right? Like it's construction. So you've got deadlines for everything. So it's like, this draw is closing in 2 hours. You have to get me all this information. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to approve the stored materials line item, which may be a big dollar amount. And then I'll get like a text of a photo. I'll get, an email with a scanned document and like all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I would take the time and like put it all together because I'm the one ultimately who has to go to the developer and the lender and kind of talk through and justify for them, like, this is why you should pay. So I would spend time on that. But I also just like had a front row seat to some contractors that were well-oiled machines and really, really good with their paperwork, and some contractors who just couldn't hack it. And like seeing the ramifications of that, like in a general contractor seat, to me was just like eye-opening. And there were like, I think this is something that often like gets overlooked, but if you're a really professional contractor and you have all of your paperwork buttoned up, GCs like to work with you. Like we would have times where, we'd have all the bids come in and there'd be a contractor that's like, I knew they were super professional and they would be incredible to work with. And if we were working on a project like a bank job where you have a lot of paperwork requirements, I'd be like, oh man, I hope these guys come in at the lowest price because they're going to be the best for me. But someone else would come in lower and the client would be like, the difference between those two contracts is going to pay for a lot of Tylenol for you, Claire. So like deal with the guys that aren't going to be able to handle the paperwork. And I would get stuff like, handwritten on a sheet of paper and like I would type it up. So there were a lot of like times like that, but ultimately it all came down to just like seeing really good builders kind of struggle from a paperwork perspective that ultimately hurt their cash flow and hurt their business. And it was like, we've got to build products that can help them manage this better.
So even doing the big mega projects that you would do, you would find that the discrepancy of you really are buttoned up compared to like, what is this on a napkin? What are we talking about? What are we doing here?
Truly. Yeah. I mean, also like in New York, you got a lot of like really old school builders. And like they are sometimes the absolute best at their trade. And they're the person that you want doing the job. And they're really good, businessmen. They're not going to kill you with change orders. And like they come from the handshake world. And there's someone that you want to work with, but the paperwork takes a hit, and then I would help them out.
So how does a sub start scaling to go upstream? So you say you do a bunch of residential work. Usually you got to either have to do something bigger, maybe a smaller commercial job, or you got to do a lot more residential work. What is that path that they go down that you see, and then what do they not know or they underestimate that they then get crushed by because it's like, oh, this is a different game now. We're not just doing the handshake. Yeah, I'll totally do your plumbing in your spare bedroom.
I mean, commercial work is a totally different ballgame. I cannot stress that enough. But yeah, I think like the paperwork requirements are just going to totally put your back office team underwater. And like, we work with some, we work with contractors, very wide range, like doing $1 million annually to doing $1 billion annually. And the, smaller contractors that are maybe just building their business, like a lot of times the owner is actually the person that's doing all of the paperwork on the weekends and like would rather be spending time with their family. And they're often calling clients and, saying, hey, I know I missed the deadline again, but like, please let me be included in this billing cycle. So I think like the biggest thing is time to payment. It is really difficult to get paid in commercial construction because of all of the red tape around the process. And that's why the industry average is around 96 days right now. So I think being aware of that and the financial implications of taking on these projects and not getting paid right away. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And then also like expanding into different markets, like you really have to be thoughtful about, what that market looks like and working with the general contractors in that region and how things differ. And I think like we also work with a lot of contractors that do a lot of commercial work and are trying to break into service, for example, but there's tons of paperwork that also comes with service work, and the longer it takes you to actually submit your invoice, the harder it is to get paid.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's a challenge.
And endless cycle.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you're doing smaller jobs, maybe you're getting paid in 30 days, maybe, right?
Yeah.
But then when you go to commercial, it's like, well, average is 96. So, we're talking like you got a long time before you're going to get paid. So you have to have a good sized piggy bank, or you got to take out a loan or something. Is that's really the only option? Otherwise, you're going to totally shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Draw on our line of credit. I'm actually, working with a contractor right now who is breaking into the commercial space.
That's
and
cool. It was actually exciting, though, right? Like it's super exciting.
It's fun. Like on the business development side, like they're pumped about it. They're working on these big projects that they've, never tackled before. But the accounts receivable person was like, the amount of times I've cried over billing, it like honestly broke my heart. I was like, sucks. I want to help you. Cause she was like, I mean, I think not only is the time to payment really different, but it's also the requirements of what you have to do to get paid are really different. So it's not just like, hey, generate your invoice and send it to me whenever you're ready. It's like, you must submit this package of 15 documents, and maybe you've never seen these forms before and you don't know how to fill them out, and they have to be submitted by the 15th of the month, or you are not going to be included and you need to wait an additional 30 days, or you need to log into this portal that you, by the way, also probably need to pay for. And, maybe you don't know how to use that portal. So you're juggling a lot of different things. And that was kind of where our product originated, was just like giving contractors like a command center to juggle all these things and spit out all the custom forms that the clients throw at you. Because it's like, this will help you appreciate it. We have 20,000 different client forms in our database. Like,
wow, goodness.
Even working on with the same general contractor, you can have totally different requirements on the next job that you work on with them. So it's just hard to keep track of this. So it's crazy. So many accounts receivable people who've been, a lot of them have been doing this for a long time, cannot take vacation. It's crazy. And early customers, she's incredible. I love this woman. And I remember her sending me an email when she was probably 3 or 4 months into using Siteline. And she was like, hey, I'm at Disney World with my grandchildren during billing week. And I was like, yes, you are.
That's
hell
awesome.
Yeah. Because it's everything is stored in there instead of, if you took the time off and you have to call someone and say, I'm sick today, I'm so sorry. You have to go into this folder for this job and fill out these Excel forms. And then there's this other Word form that you need to print and sign and notarize and send it to this person. It's just so complicated, frustrating.
So then in generality, Siteline is your financial battle center. I don't know. Is that but you explain it better than I just butchered it, please.
I like to say billing command center.
There you go.
Of just everything that you need to do to get paid and everything that you need to worry about to make sure that you're actually able to collect. All of it is in there. You're expanding your business and you're taking on a project in a different state. Don't worry about it. It's going to give you everything that you need to protect your business in that state.
All right, cool. One last question I got for you, because this, got to go big picture. So obviously the industry is built the way it is today, but if you designed it from scratch today, what would be the change in regards to the flows of money?
I think that I think the approval process for draws is too long. Obviously, it's taking 96 days for contractors to get paid. So I think we have so many solutions now that can document field progress. And I think all of it should be instant. I think you should right now, and you probably didn't think I was going to, it's not going to be a quick answer. But
go, no.
Right
it
now,
could be
as
long
a
as it
contractor, because of how long the paperwork takes, you're typically projecting through the end of the month. So you're billing on, let's say, the 15th and saying, here's what I think I'm going to finish by the end of March. And then at the end of the month, that's when the GC might come back and say, hey, you actually didn't finish this stuff. Redo all the paperwork. And it's okay, well, maybe I should have just waited to the end and actually billed for what I finished. So having it just be the end of the month, everybody has all the documentation of what's been completed. Everyone is there. They get a ping on their phone. So-and-so billed for all this work. We can confirm it's done. Click, click, click. Everyone's yes. And then the money goes.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is that what Siteline is going to do? You're going to change the industry that much that it is bang. That's it.
I hope so. We have a lot of work to get there, but yeah, I hope so.
Hey, you got time. You got plenty of time, 50 more years or something. So yeah, this has been a ton of fun. I hope you also had a good time.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. If somebody want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably email, which is just claire@siteline.com.
Okay, cool. And then is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say our goodbyes?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. This has been a ton of fun. Listeners, I hope you had as good a time as we did. And until next time, adios.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.